Hi there, hello, this is me, it's Moscow here, and this is Leedsista Libre, the free podcast in which I bring you a recording of me saying some things that I've written a while ago. This one not too long ago, because it's an international break, and it's an international break with the extra interest of Marcelo Bielsa's Uruguay playing against Dominic Calvert-Lewin's England, a match that I am looking forward to attending on Friday evening and hoping it doesn't go as badly for Marcelo Bielsa as it did when his team lost 5-1 to the United States in November. This is from November last year, and it's a long article about all the things that Marcelo Bielsa said after that game to justify everything he'd ever done by the time he was done with it. There's an introduction following this introduction that tells you all it is about, and if you want to leap from it straight to reading my A to Z article about Darren Kenton, look, it's really interesting. Kenton played with an amazing variety of Leeds United players before and after playing for Leeds United itself, and it's arguably a lot more interesting than the report about the Brentford game. Although I think I got some fun out of that, but anyway, you probably just want to hear about Marcelo Bielsa, so sit back, relax, and listen to me talking about Marcelo Bielsa, talking about everything, the way that only Marcelo Bielsa can. Hi there, hello, this is me, it's Moscow here. I hope you're sitting comfortably because this will take a while. You're probably sitting more comfortably than Marcelo Bielsa is right now because he held a press conference last week after a much changed Uruguay team lost 5-1 to an also much changed United States men's national team, as they like to be known. Brendan Aronson came off the bench for a bit at the end, but by that time all the damage had been done. And it was so bad that Marcelo Bielsa felt the need to bring all the press together for a surprise press conference in Uruguay a few days later, where everybody thought he must be resigning. He was not resigning. He was saying a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. You've probably seen the headlines from it about him describing himself as toxic. That will come up later. There was obviously much more to it than the clips that you might have seen on social media. But because he said so much, believe me, I have distilled it as much as I possibly can to bring you the essential parts of what he was saying. But everything he says is essential. We know this from Leeds. So let's begin with how Marcelo Bielsa's extracurricular press conference last week had ominous parallels with the end of his time at Leeds. Bielsa brought the press together himself after his Uruguay team had lost 5-1 in the USA, and a reporter after the match had said watching the game had been like tearing his eyes out. I had never heard such aggressive phrases, Bielsa said. It made him realize he had to face up to what has caused this, the defeat, and submit to the questions that the public is asking. The main question was the same as after Leeds United lost 4-0 to Spurs in February 2022. Would he be stepping down as head coach? And the answer was the same as he gave that day. No. I have the same strength from day one to remain in the national team until the World Cup. If at any time I considered that I should not continue, it was not at this moment. When he was saying the same thing at Leeds, he'd already been sacked. But Bielsa said he'd had long discussions with the Uruguayan FA and they'd agreed he should keep working. He also said that despite noise in the press, he did not feel like he'd lost the Uruguayan players, based on the same reasoning he used to decide the Leeds players were still behind him in 2022. The relationship between players and their coach is, Bielsa says, the same everywhere. The players say to their coach, I give you everything, my energy, my loyalty, my effort, my convictions, but make me win, because otherwise all that effort is for nothing. Now, if as a result of my management we lose a match 5-1 and we lose it the way we did, I'm not going to think that nothing happens to a football player's feelings. But from there to saying we want the coach to leave, I think there's a gap. The gap remains because he can see the players are still trying to give him everything. Indifference, disobedience, not responding to the game proposal, that's how players let go of your hand, he said. Anyone who has played football and has suffered or been on the receiving end of a player letting go of your hand knows these are the signs. I'm not running, I'm lazy, I'm not doing what I'm told, I'm not reacting, I'm angry, I'm in a bad mood. I didn't see any of that in the match against the United States. They ran like animals and outran the opposition, but they failed to play well. And that's not the players' fault. It's the fault of what the coach does with the energy available. Bielsa was determined to take responsibility for the defeat and its manner, but in a sport used to generalities, he was determined to move responsibility from concept to specifics. But what am I responsible for? What did I do wrong? You have to say what you did wrong to see if the phrase "I take responsibility" has any weight or no weight at all. So, I always took responsibility, and I did so in a legitimate and honest way, because what I did on each occasion previously was to summarize the mistakes I believe I made. He had already rewatched the 5-1 defeat several times, because I want to see things that I didn't see the first time, that I didn't see the second time, that I didn't see the third time, he said. Each time after seeing some problem or detail, he can put that one aside and look beyond it for others. From this rewatching, he learned that what we did with the United States is to be always 1 second late, not to not go to the ball. Being late is different from not going. The Uruguayan player always goes, always competes. But the United States arrived to the ball or to tackles on time, and Uruguay did not arrive on time. The degree of intensity and desire of both teams was equal, but one was late and the other was early. The coordination is late because when we arrive, the ball has already been passed, and that is the coach's responsibility. Yes, the team has spirit. Yes, it has desire, but it arrives too late. It is poorly coordinated, and that is the coach's responsibility. With that, Bielsa was identifying a significant detail that marked the difference between winning and losing the game, but the reporters preferred the generalities. Another familiar hangover from Leeds was asking whether Bielsa should have a plan B. In reply, he had to reiterate that there is more to a style of play than changing where the players stand at kickoff. The first reference to changing the style is to change the distribution of the players on the field. That's the famous Plan B. So instead of playing 4-3-3, he played 4-2-4, whatever. For me, that is not the problem. The change of style has other characteristics: playing counter-attack, waiting to attack later, generating wide space, taking refuge in your own half, and then creating danger with long passes. What we strive for is to play in the opposition's half, to be available, to recover the ball, because recovering a lot of balls seems like a defensive act, doesn't it? We want to recover a lot of balls so we have a lot of balls to attack with. We want to play in the opposition's half to be closer to the goal. After losing 5-1, the listener may be reluctant to appreciate what I'm saying, but as the question you're asking me refers to how I imagine improving the team's performance, this is how I imagine it: by perfecting and refining the things that make us better offensively and bring us closer to the goal, because when you play close to the opponent's goal and lose the ball when you reach the area, defending is much easier than if you lose the ball in your own half and don't get to attack. I come here knowing what phrases the media will latch onto. Bielsa added about this later, frustrated by another question about Plan B, about why he seemed stubborn or stuck to one never-changing style of play. He says he is self-critical, yet he always does the same thing. What a perfect phrase to stick in anyone's head without having to think. I am not here to talk to you reporters, but rather to talk to what you say you represent, the vehicle for talking to people. Do you think I do not use Plan B? I constantly use Plan B, and you have to see it in the players who play in certain positions with different characteristics. Those are the alternative plans. Now, you say, no, it's always the same. You always play with 2 midfielders, right? But how can it be the same to play with Martinez and with Ugarte as it is to play with Valverde and Bentancur? So, of course, I've made countless alternative changes. Different players play football in different ways. It's a simple thing, but it's often ignored by football's cult of the coach. And I've noticed in recent press conferences that Bielsa seems to be talking more about the influence of players. A couple of months ago, he was talking about how one crack, a player who can dribble and make goals himself, renders all his work on detailed plans irrelevant, and about what a joy a player like that brings. In this conference, he explained more about his methods and positioned himself not as a genius of football tactics, but as an interpreter of players, translating from one to another. "Do you know what my way of working is?" he said. "I have been looking at plays for 40 years. When you see a play, it's a solution to a problem presented by the game. For example, you don't have a good dribbler, so you pass, go for the return, create a wall and eliminate an opponent. That's a play, do you understand? There's an empty space between the fullback and the centre-back and a gap, and there's a change of direction, a free run by a midfielder. That's a play. I have been doing that for 40 years. I watch the play, and when I see that a play is repeated many times and is effective, I say, this is football, and the footballer has constructed a solution that is effective for a recognizable problem." Do you understand the concept? Because it is difficult to understand this concept, because imagine that every time I want to explain it like this, all I generate is rejection because I have so much trouble explaining it. Well, for me, that is the key. And I name all the exercises, or the vast majority of them, after the player I copied them from. I turn them into exercises, incorporate them into a method, and use them in training according to what I think the team needs. Do you understand me? So I work on a basis of 300 exercises and design the training sessions, because the important thing is that I don't interfere with football, I copy it. Because interfering with football is a bad habit of coaches. They want football to work based on their imagination, and the only imagination that counts in football is that of the players. Here, Bielsa drew a distinction between one-off moments, something produced only once by the player who imagined it, and the plays he is talking about, things that happen often enough to be copied, to become repeatable solutions. When something is repeated, it can be imitated, he said, because there are things that are inimitable. You understand me? Not everything is an exercise. You can train Riccardo Boccini's touch. Boccini was a childhood idol of Maradona in Argentina. You can train Riccardo Boccini's touch for a deep vertical pass. What you cannot train is Boccini's sight to detect in that tangle that is a defense which is the pass he has to make. Not everything can be imitated. So, I have a number of exercises, and when the matches are over, I can review the 300 exercises in 5 minutes, because I have them described so I can see them quickly. And I say, the team needs this, it needs that, this is what we need, this is what we're getting, this is where we went wrong. This is the key, and this is how Bielsa was able to improve a player like Calvin Phillips so quickly, by showing him other players in his position. If we imagine, probably incorrectly, but still, that those 300 exercises are being evenly spread across outfield positions, that gives each player 30 exercises to learn so that they can solve problems in their position. That means 30 sets of video clips showing what to do, and 30 training exercises to practice copying what's in those clips. That, plus fitness, feels achievable. Think about Liam Cooper and those long passes he started playing out of defence, and the video clips he'd watched of an example player, the training sessions practicing just that one thing, and then build a jigsaw so that the player receiving the ball from Cooper on the right wing has an arsenal of options for taking on the fullback. And this is how consistent patterns are seen across Bielsa's teams, because the players are drawing from the same library of solutions, meaning, from time to time, different teams will make the same plays in the same order. This is also how you develop consistency, so that it doesn't matter who is playing on the right, Jack Harrison, Helder Costa, Robbie Gotts. They will always be trying to do the same things that the rest of the team can interpret. And remember Bielsa's insistence that he couldn't improve Pablo Hernandez, that Pablo in fact improved him as a coach, because Pablo was a resource of solutions that Bielsa could add to his library if he could work out a way of repeating them. This is behind his constant observation of football. He's not trying to imagine new ideas, but find them. Guardiola is a guy who builds things that do not exist. That's why he is a different guy, Bielsa said, because he does not copy them, he builds them, and they are the product of his genius for observing football and finding new things. I'm not like that. I don't have that ability, but I am persistent, and I will search and look and build options for Uruguay that will be new. I don't know if they will be positive, but they won't be negative. The headlines from the press conference focused on Bielsa's assessment of his difficulties communicating his ideas, or just dealing with people. I always say one word, he said. I am toxic. Being around me makes people worse. That was clipped up and sent round social media as if it was a revelation, but it's not a revelation to Bielsa. He was describing his obsessive character as a product of a fear of losing. Because you don't enjoy winning, you fear losing much more than you enjoy winning, he said. Ask any coach. He mentioned an example from long ago at Newell's Old Boys. The goalkeeper, Scaponi, used to say to me, "Where are you? You're never seen. We're focused all day long and we don't know where you are." And I told him, it's better than I'm not there, because when I arrive, there's always the possibility of a problem arising. But he also said that despite this, his character needn't be a problem as long as he is able to be himself. What sincerity and directness guarantee is that what is happening is true, he said. So, I am a shy person, I am an obsessive person, I am a mechanized person, I don't like disorder, I feel uncomfortable in that scenario. So, well, those are my shortcomings. I find it difficult to act relaxed, uninhibited, friendly. It's not my way of being. But within that way of being, I was always rated positively by the people I lived with or worked with, because you can see that there are other values that can generate acceptance. But well, obviously, humanly speaking, I've not yet achieved acceptance from this group that I lead. Which is a problem, but not one Bielsa feels is yet being transmitted to the field. As he has outlined previously, players will only run if they feel enthused by the idea of playing, and Uruguay's players are running. For as long as they're running, they might not play well, but they shouldn't play badly. But Bielsa realizes he is struggling to find a way of communicating with the players. One problem has arisen because he refuses to treat players differently according to their reputations, as Luis Suarez discovered. I don't want to ingratiate myself with the heavyweights. I want to ingratiate myself with the players legitimately. Another part is simply a generation gap. I have not managed to get them to value the things that underpin my moral authority. This does not mean that the players do not have moral authority, but there is clearly a discrepancy between the prevailing values of those who are 30 years younger than me, and those who are 30 years older. Some of it is simply a problem of a sense of humour. Bielsa described trying to use music to motivate the players. There is a song that drove me crazy when I heard it, linked to Uruguayan football. I would almost say that it is one of the best football songs I have ever heard. A los Cuadros Chicos by Canario Luna. Well, that's a song that you have to be wooden not to get excited by if you love soccer. I said, guys, listen to what it says, because it is so empowering that when we were kids who loved football like crazy, a bottle cap and a blank wall were a ball and a goal, the entrance to a garage and a tomato or a zapalito, a small round courgette, that was left there from the greengrocer who passed by, they were a goal and a ball. That is the past of all of us who love football. And when you refer back to that past, you are a much better professional football player. And they find the best stage in the national team. They don't care if they win money or not. They come because they are looking for that love of football. It seems like the song went down well to inspire the national team, the Celeste. Some of the lyrics are, from recess at school with a paper ball, glorious blue, the clear sky is your majestic flag, with the light blue showing off on the chest, you always play to be a champion. When the glorious Celeste plays, the shirt sweats the heart. Bielsa says this is something that he, as an Argentinian, has to work hard to find as coach of Uruguay, as presumably he did to great success in Chile. But when he tries jokes, the players take him too seriously. When they held an early morning training session, he tried to tell them about the invention of a new camera that could read faces and understand their mood, whether they were ready to train. This new invention would scan their grumpy faces and send them all home. No one laughed, said Bielsa. What's more, they asked me some questions about the aspects, whether I had evaluated the technological aspects of the proposal I'd received about this camera. He tried to get a laugh from the journalists during the conference too, when he was talking about wanting to resign from Newell's when they'd lost 6-1, one of the darkest days of his early coaching career. He told his wife he would take a few days to think about it. Well, nobody resigns on Wednesdays, his wife said. If you don't resign by Wednesday, you won't resign. Bielsa looked around the room at that point. That makes me laugh, but you don't find that phrase funny? Saying that nobody resigns on Wednesdays. That's a very funny phrase to me, he said. And it's good, I guess, that Mr. and Mrs. Bielsa have each other. It's this tension between authenticity and community where Bielsa often seems to find himself stuck. For one thing, he says, he can't tell jokes. It is clear that I'm a terrible actor, a very bad clown, he said. But he feels like he has to try to make steps towards what the players expect from him. But that's a dangerous game to Bielsa. He gave an example of a motivational technique that no longer works. You will all remember that 25 years ago there was a resource that was a videotape before a final. It was usually filmed by the physical trainer. In the video, the friend from the neighborhood, the newspaper seller, the waiter from the neighborhood, the son, the mother, everyone was crying, saying to the players, "Win the match, we're waiting for you, the dream." Well, that had its time. The players would get emotional, go out onto the pitch, and after a while the players would say, "Don't make us cry again, get that out of here once and for all." They considered it a resource, not a genuine message. In football, he said, as he often said at Leeds, all styles of playing and coaching are equally valid. All that is essential is to be able to genuinely excite a player to get them to perform to their full potential. He pointed to teams who have a good period, then it goes wrong, so they fire the coach and hire his opposite. And that works too. They have a good period, then it goes wrong, so they fire the coach and hire his opposite again. In many ways, what the coach believes in or tells the players to do doesn't matter. What matters is that they are sincere. What never succeeds, said Bielsa, is someone who is obsessive and wants to disguise themselves as understanding, or someone who is understanding and wants to disguise themselves as rigid. Why? Because the players see through you when you try to deceive them. If you are demanding but you dress up as a good guy, the players say, "Yeah, it's temporary, it's not real." And the opposite is true. So we have no choice but to act according to our essence. And Bielsa's essence, he said, is something he is stuck with. There are great coaches who should be celebrated like Johan Cruyff or Cesar Menotti, who should be applauded for living football for the hope of winning, for enjoying life without being obsessed with the fear of defeat. Menotti believed the opposite, lived the opposite of what I think, said Bielsa, and I would like to live the complete opposite of what I live, but this is what I've been given. That's how it came about. In 40 years, there are a lot of elements that enable you to do certain things, but not others. And Bielsa, unable to change, is also unable to promise anything about Uruguay's performance at next year's World Cup. I only allow myself to say what I am sure I can deliver, he said. I'm not going to make concessions. All the issues that are brought to my attention by the press, I have dealt with. Obviously, I have addressed them insufficiently or incorrectly. Later, he said, I spend all day with the players. I correct their little mistakes. Problems can be solved by working to improve the solutions, but Bielsa knows, from everything he hears back from the press, that few people have the patience for that. Because here, everyone believes that what doesn't work has to be changed, he said, and that's a product of the world we live in. In other words, this doesn't work, so we have to change it. That way, you can sell something new. There is another possibility. What is it? It is if the work we are doing still needs time to mature, to be refined, to be perfected, to be convincing, to find small nuances. But I know that everything I say is being listened to, because most of us are listened to, but not to see if what we say is right or wrong. We're listened to in order to say why it is wrong.